But I want to tell you a little bit about a mindset that we need to have when we engage a civil magistrate. And I want to tell you a couple stories. One time, some abolitionists here in Texas got a meeting with their representative, which actually is pretty easy to do. Now, it's hard to get a meeting with somebody else's representative, right, in someone else's district. But in your district where you live, it's actually pretty easy to get a meeting with your representative. So these abolitionists did. And they asked the representative, hey, can Bradley Pierce come? He helped draft this bill, and he can answer some of your legal questions. Can he come? He said, yeah, well, I'd love to have him come. So I go to the meeting, and we end up meeting for an hour, I think, with this representative at the Capitol. And he told us, listen, I agree with y'all. I agree with y'all. I want to end abortion. In fact, I am very, very pro-life. In fact, that's one of the main reasons that I ran for office is to save babies. But I'm not going to co-author the bill. And we talked to him for a while, and he kept kind of crawfishing. And he said, well, okay. He kind of got honest, which is hard to do. And he said, well, the reason that I'm not is because I'm not going to co-author the bill because almost nobody else is co-authoring the bill. It's like, wait a second. So you're not going to co-author because others aren't going to co-author. I wonder if I go ask them why they aren't co-authoring. I bet they're not co-authoring because you're not co-authoring. So I said to him, politely, but I said to him, the people who elected you didn't elect you to follow all the other representatives. They elected you to lead. And he just looked at me, just baffled. He looked at me with this look on his face, and he's just like, you're an idiot. It's just how I felt like he was looking at me. Well, he never did. He never did sign on to the bill, even though we gave him every single argument and plea that we could think of. But around that same time, we had a group of people come to the Capitol. We had a lobby day. We went to, I think, pretty much every representative's office, dropping off material, asking for meetings. And at the end of the day, our group came back, and we were kind of sharing our different experiences, kind of a debrief. And there were some people from my representative's district, my neighbors, and they said, yeah, we went to Representative so-and-so's office. It was my representative. This was in 2017, not the one where my wife called. This was the one before, although I'm sure she called in too. But in this one, they went to my representative's office, and he had not yet co-authored the bill either. His name wasn't on it. And they'd gone to him, and they'd met with him for about an hour, and he'd given them lots of reasons, and finally he told them the real reason. And they reported that he said, well, the people who are currently co-authoring the bill are in the doghouse with the Speaker of the House. And so once somebody beyond that group co-authors the bill, then I'll sign on. It's like, oh, okay. I mean, I was really surprised by it. Not surprised that he would say that, but surprised that he would admit that to constituents. So I went over to his office right then, and he had already left for the day, but I talked to his chief of staff, talked to him for a long time, and finally he told me the same thing. I said, well, once someone beyond this group signs on to it, then Representative so-and-so will sign on to it. And I told him what I told that other representative. I said, we did not elect this representative to follow the speaker or anybody else. We elected him to lead. That's what I told him. And I felt pretty good about that. But he gave me the same look, the same baffled look that just said, like, okay, dude, whatever, you're an idiot. And I was still kind of naive. But a couple weeks after this meeting, my representative still had not signed the bill, and we were going to have a rally at the Capitol. And so a local Republican club, contacted me, and they said, hey, we'd like you to come speak about abolition to our group. So I came and I spoke for maybe an hour and a half or something. It was a long time. And told him about the Supreme Court, gave him my Supreme Court talk. Talked about how pro-life compromise and incrementalism and why that was bad. And I talked to him even about what we heard earlier about why mothers should also be subject to prosecution as equally as anybody else. And before I could even finish, one of the members of this group, an older gentleman in his upper 70s, he stood up and interrupted. And he said, listen, everybody, he's right. What he's saying is right. And in fact, listen to this. In the 1960s, I pressured my girlfriend to have an abortion, and she did. She did because I pressured her, and she did because it was legal, even then, for her to do that. He's right. And then he started saying, and you know what? But Jesus Christ has forgiven me. And he started preaching the gospel in this meeting. So I just joined right in there with him, and we just go. And this group, that week, one of their members had died tragically. And so mortality was on the front of everyone's mind. So it was just a very powerful moment. So we kind of come down from that, and he's weeping. It's a very powerful moment. And we come down from that, and I said, okay, well, I just have just a couple last things before I go. Thank you all very much for having me. I just want to invite you to our rally this Saturday. Oh, and by the way, our Representative so-and-so, he has not yet signed on to the bill. So, and a man just interrupted me. And he said, listen, you keep, son, because this is mostly an older group, as most Republican clubs are. Not that they should be, but he said, son, thank you for what you're doing. You keep doing what you're doing. You leave Representative so-and-so to us. I'm like, okay. And guess what? Within 48 hours, guess whose name was on that bill? And not only that, guess who was standing with us at the rally on the stage that Saturday? My representative. Terry Wilson is his name. So my representative. So I think there's a lesson there. Politicians are followers. That's something that we all need to remember. We need to get rid of this notion that politicians are leaders. We need to get rid of this notion that they are leaders. Because by and large, they're not. Sometimes they'll lead. Sometimes they'll lead on certain issues. But in general, you can pretty much presume that they're not going to lead. They're not going to lead. They're going to follow. And so who do they follow? Do they follow their colleagues? Sort of. Do they follow the leadership, right? The Speaker of the House, Lieutenant Governor, the Governor? Again, sort of. But again, that's just saying, well, let politicians follow politicians. I mean, that's pretty circular. I mean, what is the outside force that can change any of that? What's the outside force that they listen to? You. Voters, to put it in political terms. Voters are who they listen to. Voters and those who influence voters and those who can help them influence voters. That's who they listen to. That's who they follow. You are the leader. You are the leader. Sometimes we blame these legislators for the bad stuff they do or the bad stuff or the good stuff that they don't do. And we should. We should hold them accountable. Because not only do they have a duty to us, they have a duty that they've sworn, so help me God, to do as well. So we should hold them accountable. They should be leading, but don't be surprised when they don't. In fact, be surprised when they do. Be very surprised when they do. They're leading. We are the leaders. And I don't mean you individually with your eloquence walking into their office and persuading them. I mean we, the voters, we are the leaders. Many of you know the story about Jeremiah Thomas, who on his deathbed, Governor Abbott here in Texas called and said, this legislative session, we're going to be working to completely outlaw abortion in the state of Texas. And he made that promise to him. Well, when that legislative session rolled around, we contacted his office. And we said, can we get a meeting with you? We want to talk, or with your office at least. We want to talk about you making this an emergency item for the legislature to outlaw abortion. And they replied very politely, but no meeting. No meeting. Meanwhile, as we're requesting that, we're collecting petitions. Right? And within about 32 days, we collect the petitions of over 75,000 Texans calling on Governor Abbott to keep his promise and saying, we'll stand with you in keeping your promise. But here's the other thing. They not only signed our petition, they signed up for our email list in doing that. So before we even delivered those petitions, we sent an email out to all these people. And we said, we've asked for a meeting. Governor Abbott hasn't given us a meeting. He hasn't made an emergency item. Can you call him? And we got a report through the grapevine that 1,000 people called his office. And within hours, it was the same day, people were still calling his office. I get an email that says, we'd like to meet with you. Because guess what? There's a whole lot of angry voters who are calling my office. I'm all of a sudden interested in what you have to say. Did we get any more eloquent? No. You got a lot louder. And that's what they listened to. Everybody's trying to get a meeting with their politician, but sometimes we don't need to be contacting the politicians. We need to be contacting the real leaders, the voters, people in the community. Everyone's trying to get politicians to do something, but instead we should be going to the members of our community and getting them to do something, because that's what politicians will listen to. So ultimately, how do we engage civil magistrate? Here's what I'm saying. Go and make disciples. Go and call people to repent. Go tell people the truth. Expose them to the truth. Hold the politicians accountable. Tell them what happened. Just tell them what happened. Tell them what politicians are doing. Go be a messenger. Go talk to churches. Go talk to Republican clubs, Republican groups. Go and recruit more abolitionists. Go and reach the true leaders, the voters, and those who influence them with the gospel message and the truth. Then, if their hearts and minds are changed, if they awake from their sleep, if they come to the truth, then you're going to see the politicians follow. Like I heard somebody say, how do you make a politician see the light? When do they see the light? When they feel the heat.